Hi there, Michael here for the fourth Elite Dangerous Fiction Diary. In today's diary I'm going to talk about slavery in the Empire, provide a bit more information on that, and I'm also going to answer a few more questions from the DDF forums. So starting with, as I say, slavery in the Empire. So slavery is probably one of the more contentious aspects of the Empire, and obviously there's a lot of negativity associated with the act of slavery itself. But the intention with the way that we structured it is that it isn't as immediately negative as you might think. So, you know, how can that be? So the first thing is that slavery provides a safety net for imperial society, so that people that have no way of looking after themselves but can still work, for example, do have the option of selling themselves into slavery. So one of the interesting things about selling yourself into slavery as an imperial citizen is that you're given a lump sum up front. So people who have got themselves into ridiculous sums of debt can usually find some way of sort of negotiating their way out of it. Obviously for an amount of time that they're required to work to their new owner. So another of the issues that people commonly raise with slavery is the fact of the conditions that they work in. In imperial society, owning a slave has a lot of prestige attached to it, but it also has a lot of responsibility that goes along with it. You know, so rights kind of flow upwards in society, but responsibility flows downwards. So if you own a slave in the Empire, then you are required to make sure that you look after them very well, treat them properly, and don't overwork them. It's seen, especially the higher up in society that you go, that mistreating your slaves or not providing them with the rights that they deserve is seen as a horrible loss of pride. It's you know, if it's found out about, then others of your peer, or your level or above, will generally look down on you because of this. That doesn't mean to say that mistreatment doesn't go on. But it tends to happen away from sort of the main centres of imperial power. And as I say, if you get caught at it, then it's a huge loss of face. So another interesting thing about slavery is that you can't be forced into slavery if you're an imperial citizen. That's not quite the same as if you're, say, captured in battle and you're not a citizen. You have to choose to become a slave, but as I say, there's reasons for doing so. You get sort of money up front. This contrasts actually with the Imperial Navy, which to a certain extent could be compared to a similar role as slavery in imperial society, in that it provides a safety net for those who don't necessarily have anything else to do. They can join the Navy, you know, and traditionally sort of learn a trade, see the galaxy, that kind of stuff. But the interesting difference there is that in the Navy you don't get your sort of bonus until the end. Although they do have this interesting thing where if you sign on for sort of a second tour of duty, so to speak, each tour being sort of 10 years, then similar to sort of the old Roman Empire, then they would have what are called colonizing legions, where you're not just a soldier, you're also an engineer and you're helping build up a new community and colony. Anyway, more on the military in another topic. So going back to slavery. Slaves can be born into families that are enslaved, but then the owner of the family has to make sure that the child is properly cared for until they reach the age of majority, which is usually around sort of 14, 15, and then are released into society as a free person. However, quite often they won't have much to go in, so you know it's quite regular that they'll either apprentice themselves to the masters or sell themselves into a period of slavery, or join the military or something similar. So again, in imperial society, you can trade slaves, although the rights remain. Just because you sold a slave to someone else, the person that's bought them, they have to take the same care of them as you did, and that includes the transportation. which is something we'll be looking into a little bit more in the game design. But within the Empire, you can't just stick them in a cargo pod, freeze them and transport them. You have to transport them with a decent level of care. But as I say, that's something that is going to be looked into more, and is actually a topic for the DDF sometime in the future. So that was a quick rundown on slavery in the Empire. As you can tell, or as you probably guessed, slavery exists outside the Empire. I'm not really going to go into that into too much detail, but for worlds that are sort of aligned with the Empire, they're expected to follow the same laws and provide sort of decent treatment and rights for the slaves. But in other places, it's not quite so favourable. The slaves are basically a very sort of overworked commodity. Many of you have been asking about whether slaves can be rescued. That is definitely something we're going to be looking into, and again will be a DDF topic coming up soon. Okay, so on to the questions from the DDF. So the first question is from Ollie Clark. Will Earth and the solar system be part of the Elite Verse, and if so, is it still habitable and inhabited? So yes, the solar system does exist in the Elite Galaxy. I mean, it's modelled after our Milky Way after all, so all the stars that we're familiar with are there. It's an interesting thing that Earth's gone through some sort of quite terrible times, severe pollution and poisoning and so forth. So it is now habitable, but it's actually a sort of enclave for the rich, and it's nowhere near as densely populated as, say, it is at the moment. Mars has actually become the centre of the Federation government, so most of the sort of government buildings and sort of agencies are based there. Next question is from Psychokov. Apologies if I got that wrong. Can we liberate slaves, and will there be various types of slaves? Well, I actually answered that question about 2 minutes ago, but yes, we intend that you can liberate slaves. And obviously that's not considered a positive thing in all societies. In the Empire, slavery isn't considered a bad thing at all. In the fiction, we do have, obviously there's different types of slaves, body slaves, warrior slaves, that kind of stuff. But whether we go to that sort of detail in the game isn't determined yet. It's possible, but we'll discuss that more when the DDF topic comes up. So the last question is from Rob Fisher. If I read closely, will I pick up clues about places I can visit in the game and things I might do there that otherwise I might not have discovered? So the answer to this is a resounding yes. So the fiction within the game is certainly intended to provide pointers. So if you read news feeds, you can get clues as to new markets for you to exploit, specialists that you can visit so you can get that extra sort of power from your lasers. And generally we want to provide hints for interesting things for people to discover and to hunt down for themselves. What we're also doing is working with the authors. We're going to see what bits from their stories, where it makes sense to do so, we can include in the game in some way. So at its simplest, it might be that you can sort of visit a place where a battle that took place in one of the stories has happened, and you can see that there's a memorial to that event. Yeah, so that's the questions for this story. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll speak to you again soon. Bye.